guys, it's Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today's video is going to be my October reading wrap-up. I finished 9 books this month. It was a really good month. I'm not complaining at all. I feel like I could have read like 4 more books instead if I had not read one huge book that I read this month. But even then, I'm still way over my reading goal for this year. If you care for the stats, I always update it in the little description box. But I'm coming today to you guys from the couch that is usually behind me just because my back is bothering me. It's been bothering me all day. I don't know what I did. I woke up fine, but then I don't know, like suddenly it's just my back feels really stiff. God, the weather's kind of changing, so I'm turning into those little old people that, you know, can predict the weather with their bones. If that's what it is, I hope it's not a bad winter for me. But anyway, I'm up here. I hope you guys don't mind, and I hope the lighting's okay and the camera positioning is okay. So anyway, I'm just gonna get started. So like I said, I read 9 books this month, and I read some okay books, a lot of okay books. And then I do have one that's kind of like two that became kind of like my favorite. So I'm gonna get started. I usually share with you guys in order of how I place them on the stack when I put for the thumbnail, and not necessarily how I read them each month. So anyway, towards the beginning of the month, I read books 5 and 6 of the Cupcake Bakery mystery series from Jen McKinley. You guys know I talk about Jen McKinley a lot. I really enjoy her library murder mystery series. I think that one's on like book 14 or 15, something like that. But I saw that she had another series, which is the Cupcake Bakery, and so this have been really fun for me, like I said. So book 5 is Going Ganache. Book 6 is Sugar and Ice. In Going Ganache, we're following Melanie. Is that her? Yeah, Melanie and Angie, the Cupcake Bakery owners, who are hosting this kind of like how to bake cupcakes type program for these other 2 companies that are doing a team building exercise. So the companies want to do a team building exercise, and so they reach out to the bakery, and the bakery comes up with a how to bake a cupcake, and they decide to turn it into a competition to see which company is the most creative when it comes to creating a new cupcake. And of course, one of the head honchos for one of the companies turns out dead, and so they have to decide, figure out who is the killer and the motive. A lot of fun. There's some murder in each of the books, but this one was a lot of fun. In Sugar and Ice, we follow Angie and Melanie again, who this kind of partakes in a beauty pageant setting. One of the Lupe, who is a friend of Angie and Melanie's, she decides to enter into the pageant because she needs money for school, and like in Miss Congeniality they say it's not a beauty pageant, it's a scholarship program. So it's kind of like that. They kind of poke fun at it that way in here, which is funny. And of course, somebody in the pageant community turns out they were deceased, they were murdered, and so they are targeting Lupe because that's what they're doing. And so we're trying to figure out again who's trying to frame Lupe and who killed this other person. So both of them were a lot of fun. Like I said, 5 out of 5 stars. Then as long as we're talking about series, I read a duology of the books Anatomy and Immortality, by Dana Schwartz. These books were just okay for me. I feel like I have seen a lot of hype around these 2 books lately, and so I picked them up, but they felt a little young for me. And not to say that I only read adult fiction, but I have read children's books, the books from Catherine Applegate. I love those, and they're children's books, so I can enjoy like a younger demographic, but these were just okay. So in these 2 books, we follow our main character Hazel. These books are set in the, the 1800s, is that right? And they're set in like Scotland during royal times. Like there's like royalty. It's not in England. They're in Scotland. And it can't be like the Victorian era because that was in the 20s, wasn't it? It's like in the 1800s. Anyway, in the book Anatomy, we follow our main character Hazel, who dreams of becoming a surgeon. But back then, of course, women were not surgeons. They were supposed to, you know, get married, have babies. That was the purpose. And so she decides to kind of dress up as a boy and attend a school for boys to become a surgeon. She is found out while she's trying to pretend to be a boy. There's another boy that she kind of like, you know, develops feelings for. Then we have like this mystery of who's providing the cadavers for the school of, because you need to focus on like study on real people, but then like bodies go missing from cemeteries, so we have like that mystery aspect going on. So it was okay, it was entertaining, it was fun, but it wasn't like as entertaining or as dark and mysterious as I thought it would be. I thought this was gonna be kind of like a gothic romance type book, but it really wasn't. It didn't feel like that for me. And then in Immortality, we follow Hazel after the events of the persecution that was happening, the mystery that's happening in this book. But in this book, she is going to the royal family to become kind of like the personal physician for the princess. And some ominous, mysterious stuff start happening in the palace, and it's up to her to figure out what's happening. So they were both okay. Like I said, I was just expecting a little bit more than, because a lot of people were talking these up so much, but I thought they were just okay. Then I also read the rest of the story by Sarah Dessen. Sarah Dessen used to be one of my favorite authors when I was a lot younger, and I haven't read one of her books in a long time. So in this book, we follow our main character, Emma Saylor, whose mom has died, and so she's grown up with her dad. And you know, her dad finally one year lets her go back to this like lake house or lake little town by the lake that her mom used to be from, which apparently she used to visit a lot once her mom was alive. But once her mom died, her dad kind of stopped, I guess, going to that area, taking her there with her family there. So when she goes back to the place, she catches up with her cousins, her friends that apparently she forgot she knew. All these people are super excited for her to be there because they haven't seen her in years, and she's kind of like forgotten about them. So we follow Emma trying to learn exactly about what happened to her mom and why her dad decided to distance herself. Eventually her dad comes back into town, and she kind of confronts him as to why she kept so many things away from him. And I don't want to say it's a coming of age story, but it's a growing up story with your parents and yourself, and realizing that you can have both. Like you don't have to choose one family over the other. You can have them both, even in the middle of not disaster but sad circumstances. I hope I'm making sense. I really enjoyed this book, but it didn't like touch me as her other books have. Maybe because I've grown older, I don't know, but it was a good book. I enjoyed it, but not the best. Then the book that took me almost 2 weeks to read because it's huge, it's like 1,200 pages, and it's IQ 84 by Haruki Murakami. This book is, like I said, a hunker of a book. It has like the tiniest, not the tiniest, but it has pretty small words, like the size of the letters. The font is very small, and there is a lot to unpack with this book. I'm gonna try to keep it simple, but this book, first of all, I don't remember why I bought it. I think I bought it on sale at Barnes & Noble, like a buy two get one free, and there were really two books that I really wanted, and the other ones I kind of had no idea what they were, so I picked this one up. It had, I guess, good reviews, and so that's why I picked it up. I've owned it for, I don't know, like 10 years, and finally picked it up. I didn't know that this is a bind up of 3 books. Apparently this is a trilogy. And so in this book we follow, okay, this is what all that says in the back: a love story, a mystery, a fantasy, a novel of self-discovery. That's it. a dystopia to rival George Orwell's 1984. And so in this book we follow we have two main characters. El Mame is a girl and then Tengo is a boy. Also, it's translated from Japanese. So there you go. So we have alternating point of views between him and her, but it's kind of like this parallel timeline, alternate reality, alternate universe reality. Is that a saying? That to me made no sense. Like, our main characters don't interact with each other until like maybe halfway through the book. So it's like a whole lot of story, a whole lot of two stories, because they're both living their separate lives, and then finally around halfway they kind of sort of start intertwining. I just found it very confusing. I guess magical realism, fantasy. I don't know how you would describe this book. It's supposed to be fantasy, but it's just so like weird and odd. I don't know if it's because of the translation, but it's not a love story. To me, there was no romance in here at all. There's a lot of sex. It's a very sexually explicit book, but it doesn't come across as romantic or even erotic. Like, it's just disturbing, like trigger warnings for like sexual abuse, sexual assault, physical abuse. And when the characters like become intimate, there's just like no emotion to it. So it was kind of like even uncomfortable to read with that, in that aspect. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. If you enjoy like, and it's not like fantasy like dragons and wizards and things like that, but it's more of like alternate reality, which if you start analyzing things a lot, like I do, like you start questioning like, well, that wouldn't make sense because in the real world it wouldn't happen. So maybe that's why I took away my enjoyment. I would possibly try to read this again later on in a few years and kind of take my time. I felt like because it was taking me so long to read, I was just trying to like hurry up and read it, and I think that took away from the enjoyment of it. So I'm not gonna, at first as soon as I finished this book, I was like, this is going into the pile that I'm donating at the end of the year. But now that I've had time to kind of like simmer on it a little bit, I think I'm gonna wait, give it a chance maybe in a couple of years or so. I don't reread books very often, but I do reread some books, and I think I would like to give this one another try later on. Not anytime soon, but later on. Then, if you guys remember, last month I forgot to read my nonfiction pick for the month. So I picked two nonfiction books this month to kind of catch me up. The first one that I have here is from Andrew Morton. This is Elizabeth and Margaret, An Intimate World of the Windsor Sisters. And it's about Queen Elizabeth and her sister Margaret, Princess Margaret. And this one I enjoyed. Kind of like, I was kind of bored the first, I don't know, third of the book, but after I got past the third or fourth of the book, I really enjoyed it. I've always felt like Princess Margaret lived a very sad, unhappy life, just because she was kind of in the shadows of her sister, and she suffered a lot personally because of all the rules that they had, rules that Prince Charles and the Prince William and Harry have taken advantage of because they're not there anymore. You know, she couldn't marry the love of her life. She couldn't do what she liked, but also because she was forced to live such a restricted life, I feel like she became very bitter and very arrogant and was not a very nice person. When you read about her life, like how extravagant and how like pompous she was, I think it was kind of like a coping mechanism for all the restrictions, and she had to live for the queen. She couldn't really live for herself or for anybody, and I just feel like she had a really sad life, and I feel sorry for her. So Very interesting book if you are into royalty stuff. I think you would enjoy this one. And then the other nonfiction book that I read, no, Brownie, she's licking my toes. No, mama. Is Educated by Tara Westover. In this book we follow, it's a memoir of Tara. She grew up in Wisconsin, Minnesota, in Idaho. So, and unfortunately, Tara grew up in a super religious family, almost like cult-like. Women were not allowed to study. They were not allowed to do anything other than be home and cook everything from scratch and get married and pop babies. And so her dad they didn't even have a phone. Her dad was kind of like stealing electricity from, I don't know from where, but so they wouldn't have to pay for electricity. He was kind of like stealing electricity. They would kind of have to work like really hard during the summers, so that during the harsh winters they would have enough like provision to last them through the harsh conditions of winter. And so she was always very curious. She always wanted to learn. Even her grandmother was so against the way her parents were raising their kids, and it wasn't always like that. Like I think her oldest two brothers got to go to school for a little bit. They had birth certificates and everything, and after that, after they became like really involved in this cult-like religion, her mom stopped going to the doctors and giving birth in hospitals, so they didn't even have birth certificates. So when she decided to finally escape and go to school, she had like the hardest time getting a birth certificate because she wasn't even sure when her birthday was. Some documents that her mom had said one date, where other documents said a different date, so it was really hard for her. And just sheer determination, she ended up getting a PhD from Oxford University. So amazing how she went from getting her GED because, you know, she missed out on school her whole childhood, and eventually as a teenager, she decided she wanted to do something for herself. And eventually she became, you know, the pride and joy of the family. Of course, it didn't come without issues with the family, problems because her dad wanted her to work. He would punish her if she wanted to come work like during the summers so she could make money before she went back to college. He would be like, well, if you're leaving, I'm not paying you. If you want me to pay you, you have to stay here and quit school. So like he was really like they had a lot of issues. It was really hard growing up in that kind of condition, but it just goes to show you that if you are willing and determined to create and make your goals, like you're gonna find a way to make it work, whether it's with help, without any help, and it's just really inspiring. It was a very inspiring story, and so I highly recommend this book. I really enjoyed this book. It deserves all the praise that it gets. And then last but not least, my favorite book of the month, I always save my favorite book for the end, is Monday Is Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. Tiffany D. Jackson has written really awesome books. My favorite book from her is called Allegedly. But anyway, in this book we follow, oh my gosh, what is the name? I can't remember our main character's name. Her best friend is called Monday, but what is the main character's name? Anyway, I don't remember our main character's name, but our main character has a friend called Monday, and suddenly she notices that Monday has missed school, and then she misses again the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and it's been a week or so, and so she's like, where is Monday? How come Monday isn't coming to school? And so she starts asking around. She goes and visits. She goes to her house and asks for her, and they tell her that she is not there anymore, that she doesn't live there. And then suddenly people in school were like, well, she wasn't even registered here, so how can how can we have a missing student if said student is not even registered? So like all these weird things start happening. Like it seems like nobody remembers who Monday is. Nobody cares that Monday has gone missing, so she decides to start investigating what has happened to Monday. Where is she? You know, what's happened to her? where is she? How come nobody cares? Like, why, what are people hiding? And so it's a really, really hard, touching story. It's one of those things that you start realizing, well, is our main character a reliable narrator, or is there something going on? Like, is she making things up? Like, what is happening? So highly recommend this book. It's an amazing book. It's kind of a big book, but the font is pretty large because it's a young adult book. But if you guys haven't checked out any of Tiffany D. Jackson's books, I highly recommend them. They are really good, and they have such like twists towards the end that I personally never see coming. But yeah, highly recommend. So that's everything that I read for the month of October. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.